So as you just saw, there's quite a few possibilities that ScoreFlash gives you. There's many different things that you can use ScoreFlash for, and there's quite a few videos that go into some of the details for different features of ScoreFlash. But this one here really is just there to give you a broad overview of how to get started with ScoreFlash. So the first thing you might want to have a look at is simply the help menu of Unity, which has a link to the first steps with ScoreFlash, which really is a little PDF that gives you the most important concepts, how to get started in an easy to read manner. Here in the help menu, you also find a direct link to the asset store and also the product page and the Unity forums. And this is really what I recommend if you have any questions. If there's something that's difficult for you to understand, something like that, just feel free to ask a question, and I'll do my best to reply to that as quickly as possible on the forum. And if you use the forum, then this also helps other users. Then there's also a way to check out which version of ScoreFlash you currently have. This is now 4.6.1, and this one here, ScoreFlash add-ons, that's really important because that links directly to the different add-ons for ScoreFlash if you want to use ScoreFlash with NGUI, for instance, or Playmaker. Some of these are paid for, but yeah, that's a possibility if you want to integrate ScoreFlash with another add-on from the asset store. So first, when you first have a look here, you'll see under plugins, Narayana Games, there's ScoreFlash. Here's the README and this PDF that I've just shown you. And then there's actually 4 components that you can attach to game objects, and a prefab that should make it very easy to just, pull it into a scene, and then you can immediately use ScoreFlash. That's really the easiest way to get started. There's one example scene here. Actually, there's plenty of example scenes, but one very, very simple one, the default one. And if you start playing, you see that this is the kind of like the default, very basic use case of ScoreFlash, just pushing messages onto the screen. And then if you go here into the inspector, you see that there's various compartments here for different configuration settings of ScoreFlash. And one thing I want to point you to is show documentation. What this does is for each and every single setting and property that ScoreFlash has, this gives you all the details about this setting. So that really is a nice way to learn ScoreFlash. And you can really play around with this, with the fade in phase, reading phase, fade out phase. That's kind of like the core animation feature here. And then there's how this works is there's testing. This auto generates messages. If you switch that off, then you would only show your own messages that you push through code or through a Playmaker action. And this also links directly into the API. So for instance, if you click on API docs for ScoreFlash, you immediately go to the page here, which has all kinds of information, including quite a few code examples, how to get different results for different use cases. So I guess that really gives you all the information that you need to get started. And I think I've mentioned that before, but really play around with the different settings here with colors. There's fade phases, then there's some sequences, random colors. As mentioned before, there's a few videos that show some of these features in details. So I also recommend watching those. But yeah, a lot can be learned really just by playing around with it. So there's the main ScoreFlash component. You also find this here under ScoreFlash. This generates a ScoreFlash object, and there's ScoreFlash layouts and ScoreFlash managers for managing multiple instances of ScoreFlash if you want different animation settings, different animations, different fonts, things like that. You would use multiple instances of ScoreFlash and then use a ScoreFlash manager to access those. And then you can attach several components. ScoreFlash, that's the main component, and then ScoreFlash Follow 3D and ScoreFlash Layout. I'll just say a few things about those, because those are really a very important concept of ScoreFlash. One more thing here about this, you have a design mode, design in scene view, and then when you go into the scene view, you can set up this ScoreFlash instance very conveniently with a visual designer. And this gives you all kinds of different settings here, which makes it very easy to set things up graphically instead of doing this via the inspector GUI, which is also possible, but just not as convenient. So if you go into example test layout, this shows one very nice feature that ScoreFlash now has. If you just want the same ScoreFlash instance, in other words, the same animation and the same fonts, but you want different locations, then you would use ScoreFlash layouts, which is a component that you can attach to any game object and then set up everything for this specific component, for this layout. This also has the same designer mode, which you can use to change how this is all set up, how the layout works. And then when you go back to game view, this is kept. And also one thing that's important, if you have keep changes after play, all the changes that you do while playing, while setting everything up, will be kept. And if you exit, you see the changes are kept. That's a very nice feature that ScoreFlash has. You can also say whether it should be stored immediately, or another possibility is just when you switch off, you can say keep changes or discard changes. That's even better than the other one. It gives you a little more flexibility. So that's the test layout. Then for the follow 3D, ScoreFlash follow 3D, that's this component here, ScoreFlash follow 3D, which is used for, basically what the name says, following objects in the game. There's one example for this. World space messages here under examples, ScoreFlash advanced world space messages. And this really illustrates how this works. Basically, there's different ways to set this up, and these are all here in this bumping objects. Look here. This shows you all the different ways this can be set up. And again, playing around with that really helps getting a really good understanding of it. Since we now have the new UnityGUI, this is also directly integrated into ScoreFlash. There's a few examples here. The achievements example, which is very nice. This is also a typical use case for achievements. And the way you do this is to create a prefab and then use that prefab as a renderer, and then you can set up everything. There's code examples included here, so yeah, this should really get you started quite conveniently. With the new UnityGUI, there's also this fun example here. When you use prefabs, you can do all kinds of funny things. This basically uses this prefab here as a renderer, and this does have a few different images, which also have different kinds of special components attached to them. So you can see that you can really do all kinds of very fancy stuff with that. And if you like virtual reality, you might be interested in messages in 3D space. Usually ScoreFlash does everything in 2D. So in other words, it gets the location, then just shows it, but on a 2D kind of canvas. But this here actually does it in 3D. Let me just switch off. As you can see here now, this is now all in 3D. So if you're like doing VR development, that should be quite interesting for you. And yeah, hope you enjoy using ScoreFlash as much as I as much as I enjoyed creating it. And yeah, if there's any questions, just let me know, and yeah, enjoy, have fun.